to our listeners is like start making those relationships very ahead of time.
Yeah, build your team, right?
Yeah.
Build your team, as we've talked about, because it's not just the analytics of running a spreadsheet, but it's developing the business plan around that spreadsheet that you can communicate and sell to investors. And
Welcome everyone to the Multifamily Deal Structuring Monday, where we will discuss about the apartment deal that our guests have closed in the past. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the bell icon so you get notified whenever a new episode is released. So our guest for today is Randy.langenderfer. So our guest Randy is the president of InvestArk Properties LLC. So he got his commercial real estate start as a hard money lender in a single family homes in South Florida, Ohio, and Texas. So with a combined market value in excess of $2.5 million. He has been in the multifamily space since 2014 as a GP, KP in 250 doors and an LP in over 4,000 doors. InvestArk Property investment goals are focused on providing above average passive income. So to investors by improving the communities using a safe and time-tested approach. So he is passionate about helping others achieve their goals in real estate and is currently a coach in Radcliffe's organization. Randy has 25 plus years of various corporate leadership experiences in multiple industries, primarily in the risk and governance areas. So he currently serves as the Chief Compliance and Audit Officer for a large academic medical institution in Houston, Texas. He has a bachelor's degree in accounting, information systems, an MBA in finance, and is a CPA. Here's the episode. Hi, Randy. Welcome to the Multifamily Deal Structuring Monday, where we will discuss all about your first GP multifamily transaction or one of your early deals. Thank you for joining us here in the show.
Jeff, it's my pleasure to be here. Thanks so much. Hoping to add some value to your guest.
Okay. If we can start with telling us about yourself.
So Randy Langenderfer, I am in Houston, Texas these days. I'm still employed doing this nights, weekends, and like you are, Jeff, and a lot of other people as well, but enjoying it. I have been both a GP and an LP. I'm currently a GP in about 258 doors, I think it is, and an LP in probably 2,500, I think. So I spend a lot of time analyzing deals and looking at various opportunities, and just like a lot of other syndicators. So, but enjoy it. This is something I'm going to leave the corporate world in the next, several years, and hopefully to do this full time, and looking forward to it.
Yep, that's nice. Yeah, before jumping to the multifamily, did you have any real estate experience prior?
My real estate experiences, Jeff, I started, I've been in multifamily about 6 years, that's 7 years now. And in single family before that for about 3 years. I had short story, I had a brother-in-law who came to me back in about 2009, and he had just gotten laid off. He was an executive for then it's now Pittsburgh National Bank. It was an exec with them, MBA, CPA, great guy, trusted a lot. And he tried to get me into flipping houses in South Florida. And I said, "You're stinking nuts." And then he further tried to get me to use my IRA to invest in these properties. And I said, "You're double nuts." Well, over the ensuing couple of years, we were pretty successful, and we did flip a lot of houses, and I did use my IRA. And but I moved to Texas, Houston specifically for business in the beginning of 2013, and learned about multifamily and have never looked back since then. It's just a lot more conducive to my goals and what I want to do. So.
Okay. Yeah. Awesome. Then you said like you're currently located in Houston, Texas.
That is correct. Sugarland, southwest corner of Houston, Texas.
Okay. Nice. Yeah. So how did you end up in multifamily?
Yeah, I said I moved to Houston, and I was real excited about moving. I was previously in Cleveland, Ohio. I moved to Houston, Texas for business reasons, and got real excited about moving to the 4th largest U.S. city from a real estate perspective. As I said, I was flipping houses at the time. And I got really started by attending one of the big educational groups here in Houston called Lifestyles. I attended one of their expos. It's an annual event where they have all kinds of, and at that time I was just new to Houston. I had been in Lifestyles for a short period of time, and I heard a gentleman by the name of Brad Sumrock speak, who is currently out of Dallas. And the short story is I joined his group out of Dallas for about three and a half years. I learned the underwriting, the networking, the capital raise piece of it, and the operations, and kind of branched out on my own to do this first deal with a couple other Houstonites. And currently I'm part of the Rod Khalif mastermind and coaching his organization. And I just really enjoy that piece of it, of giving back to the students.
Oh, yeah. That's good. Then, yeah, any limiting belief that you have, and how were you able to overcome it and get your first deal?
That's a great question. So limiting belief for me would be, is by education, I'm an accountant, finance MBA, and a CPA. And so by nature, I think finance people are very risk adverse. And I'm also, you know, at a season of my life where I don't want to lose any money. And so everybody will tell you about the shiny object syndrome, what I call it. You know, this opportunity has an IRR of 20, 30, or 15%, whatever. But I'm kind of one of those guys that has to analyze it and understand it. But I did, and I got over that limiting belief by investing in my first property. You know, and when you write that first check for $50,000, that'll you're all in at that point. Let me just say that. That's what's good.
Yep.
And never looked back. So like I said, I'm in currently about, I think currently I've been in, I was just looking the other day, I think I've been full cycle on 6 properties, and I think I'm currently in 9 other properties.
Oh.
So
yeah, that's cool. Then yeah, let's jump into your first deal in multifamily. What's the source of this deal?
So this deal was my first GP with, as I said, a couple partners. There's a first thing is to make sure that, you know, if you're going to partner, that you're what I would say like-minded or equally yoked. Rod Khalif, mentor, would say that, you know, partnerships are like a marriage. They're easy to get into, but hard and difficult and expensive to get out of. And so I think that's one lesson. We didn't have any problems, but you learn that everybody comes to that partnership with a different set of expectations and different background and different skill sets. And so I really encourage the students I talk to understand and know what the strengths and weaknesses are of each partner. There's generally somebody that's highly analytical. There's somebody that's generally very salesy or marketing type. You may have operations type in there, but know the strengths and weakness. So this one came to us. It's in a lovely city called Beaumont, Texas, which is about 120 miles, 100 so miles east of Houston, Texas. During the last set of storms this summer of 2020, it was in the path. Luckily, it got diverted. But Beaumont, Texas is part of what's called the Golden Triangle here in Texas. Port Arthur, Baytown, and Port Arthur, Beaumont, and Baytown, the triangle. And between those 3 cities, I don't know how far they are apart, but there's about 450,000 in those 3 cities. So it's not a small metro area. And this property was it was everything that they tell you not to do. So I had a friend, mentor, tell me, Randy, well, I should say before I tell you that, it was a 1965 build. We bought it in December of 2017. And it was 139 units, a 1965 build with flat roofs, chiller and boiler property. So that right away should tell you something. And I had a friend, as I said, start to tell me, Randy, if it's got a chiller boiler, don't do it. I didn't listen to him, and ended up working out okay. But it was a challenge, Jeff.
Yeah. I think people are also saying like if it's a chiller, make sure that it is in working condition because it's pretty pricey if you replace one.
Yeah, I can talk about that for a long time, but yes, in Beaumont, Texas, if the chiller goes out, in the hot heat of the summer, um, it is a big problem and expensive. Likewise, in Beaumont, Texas, if the boiler goes out and you can't provide heat to the people, even though um, we as Texans think anything below 60 degrees is cold. So even if it dips down into the 50s and the 40s and people don't have heat, that's a major problem. That's a major problem.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good point. Like, especially I think for our viewers out there, like if they're looking at the property, yeah, keep an eye on this chiller boiler. It's not like a deal breaker, but at least make sure like you have taken that into consideration. If it needs replacement, put it in your business plan to replace it.
You want to make sure that it's fairly new. You want to have a backup plan. You want to have a really good maintenance person that understands chiller boilers, because the chillers aren't, or the boilers are fairly common. Even in some of the newer like 80 and 90 builds, they'll use boilers for hot water for the entire complex. But the boiler for not only the hot water to run your shower, but to provide heat is a different place. And so that's really kind of a dying breed. And there's not a lot of plumbing types out there that still know that. So yes.
Yep. Then what's the class of this property?
So this one would be a vintage, well-maintained Class C in my mind. Maybe a C minus. I would say the property was a C in a B neighborhood. So it was very attractive to us, and I can't underestimate the chiller boiler and the flat roofs. So anytime you're looking at a property, if you're new to this game and you're looking at something with flat roofs, also be cautious. Find out when they were last replaced, not just when they were repaired, but when they were replaced. How old are they? They do have a useful life that is not indefinite, and you should build that into your capital plan.
Yep, for sure. Yeah. Because once the roof leaks, like it's a totally bigger mess inside in the interior.
Yeah, and there's newer technology out today for flat roofs called TPO. So this complex had the flat roofs, and they were the several plies of felt. And so what they do very simply is they put felt down, and then they tar it, and they put another felt layer down, and they keep staggering it. So there's multiple layers there on it. That's the vintage style of roofing. If it's put on right, it'll last a long time and it's very effective. But now the newer roofs have what's called TPO, and those old roofs are black. They're plies of felt and tar. The newer roofs are white, and it's just a thin membrane of rubber. So it's all one piece, and the seams are sealed very effectively. So because it's white, it's much better from an energy perspective. It reflects the sunlight in East Texas, the heat of the summer. And much better than the old style.
Yeah, what's the story of this property?
So the quick story, the backstory would be is this came to one of my partners via a broker. So we live in Houston. The property's in Beaumont, like I said, about 120 miles east, and it came from a San Antonio broker, which is the due opposite of the direction, about 120 miles, 3 hours west of Houston. So there's the first thing too. And this guy was really incompetent after a while. The broker story was we identified the property, and it was, like I said, this guy he was just incompetent. We wanted to buy the property. It took him months to get us any data, the T12, the rent roll, months, not just weeks, but months. That should have been our first time. And any data that we ever requested was forthcoming. He kept stalling, and come to find out, he was in the process of changing brokerage houses, and he wanted to make sure he maintained his commission on this. So he was, we learned this after the fact, that he was dragging this out intentionally so that he could maintain the commission. It got to the point where we actually just bypassed him, the broker, and went directly to the seller. And the seller cut him out of after months. I'm talking 6 to 8 months.
Wow.
The seller cut him out, the broker out, ended up paying his commission so he doesn't get in any legal fights. But after that, we were able to talk directly to the seller, and that really helped expedite things from our perspective. But Beaumont, Texas, 139 doors, 65 build, Class C. It had a lot of deferred maintenance. The seller had owned it for 25 plus years and was just cash flowing it. Every month they would pull that lever, cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching,
Okay.
and hadn't been putting a lot of money back in it. So though it had really good bones, as they say, a 65 build, the whole shell is concrete. So concrete walls, concrete slabs. It was a tank, fortress, which was good subsequently.
Yeah.
But so that's kind of the backstory. Don't buy a chiller boiler, don't buy a flat roof, and don't buy a 1965 build property without expecting put a lot of capital in it.
Yep, for sure. Then for this property, anything that stands out when you're looking at the T12 and the rent roll?
I think the first thing that came to was mostly in the rent roll was when we were analyzing the rent roll. 139 units. It's classic. It has 1, 2, and 3 bedroom floor plans, like a lot of them do. But out of 139 units, they probably had 100 different pricing schemes. It was just everywhere, and so a great inconsistency and pricing the units that we quickly said has got to change when we take over. And then the other one is just upon visualization or walking the property. When we finally were able to walk the property, it was just everything was done by hand. So they didn't have any electronic stuff. They were entering stuff in spreadsheets, and it was the property manager had literally been there for the whole 25 years. She was advanced in age and raised her 3 children on the property and was there, she claims, when it was built. So it was a well-entrenched ownership team. And so that was the plus side of it. Because when you look at it, an entrenched ownership team, actually the ownership, Beaumont, Texas was the property. The ownership team lived in Cleveland, Ohio, amazingly enough. And so they would come down to the property once a year and look at it and go, yep, still there. And other than that, it was the property manager, the on-site property manager, who really did everything. And she was just really entrenched and didn't want to anger her, because she lived on the property. She did not want to anger her colleagues by raising the rent. And so she'd raise it maybe 5 or, a very minimal amount if she did. So analyzing the rent roll also showed opportunities for us that we realized coming into it.
Okay. Yep. Okay. I think that's good. Then, what was the original asking price for this property?
So we bought it in 17, a much different place in the market. So the short answer, I don't recall the whisper price. We ended up getting it for about 38 a door, 38,000 a door, or roughly we had a gross price of 5.5 million, and then we had a $230,000 credit for roofs, because our due diligence had shown those roofs, a couple of them really needed replaced badly. And so we were able to negotiate that. But all in about 38,000 or 5.2. The total, then I think one of your probably next question could be what's total loan. So the total purchase price was 6.3. Total purchase price was 6.3 by the time you added in capital costs, closing costs, et cetera, et cetera. So about 6.3, and yeah.
Okay. Then, what was the economic occupancy like when you purchased it? Is it fully occupied? Or?
Yeah, it was. I don't recall the exact number, Jeff, but it was 95 or better, because they'd never raised the rents.
Okay, yeah, makes sense.
And they had people there that had, I mean, they had people there that had literally been there 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of 50s and 60 age group people that had been there for 20 years.
Oh,
And they were very entrenched. There was one person on the property, I've never seen this before, Jeff. They remodeled the whole kitchen at their own expense.
wow.
They put in all new kitchen cabinets.
Make it their own home, yeah.
To make it their own home. This property had, you may have seen the little courtyards or fenced in yards on the first floors of properties. A thing today for, well, all of the first floor units had these, and these people decorated them unbelievably extravagant because, like you said, it was their home.
Yeah.
So that's both a good and so that was cautious to us because we thought, oh my gosh, are we going to have to turn over the entire population of the units, or
Oh, yeah.
how many are going to stay and how many are going to leave? Because you know, the business plan is usually to start raising rents.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So how did it end up? Like, were you able to have them move, or?
So I can give you the, I mean, the quick summary is we bought the property, we took over the property. Our business plan was very simply to upgrade a lot of deferred maintenance roofs. It had mansards. If your people don't know what mansards are, they're kind of like vertical roofs on the side of a building. It's classic of those places built in the 70s. So we wanted to replace 2 of the boilers at the time. We had roofs and mansards we're going to replace. We wanted to update the clubhouse and the pool furniture, and paint a bunch and upgrade a bunch of units. We wanted to paint the entire property, etc. So we had initially a $900,000 capital budget built into our business plan to renovate.
Okay. Then, yeah, so I think that's a good segue to the financing. So for that 6.3 million all in, yeah, how much were you able to get for the loan?
6.3 all in, and I was just having to review some of my facts before I got on this phone with you here. So we got a $5 million loan, and we had to raise about 1.5, 1.4 million as the syndicators. And we're lucky the deal spoke for itself. We were able to do that in 2 days. We had a webinar. We had a webinar. We had all the you know, the pitch deck, as we refer to it, and a lot of that stuff is out there now available. But and that, you know, that's the other lesson to learn for all the people that want to be a syndicator, is to have much of your capital raised before you get there. And so if you're going to raise $1 or $5 million, you better have a really good feel for where you're going to get that money.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I think that's a good point also to our listeners. It's like start making those relationships very ahead of time.
Yeah, build your team, right?
Yeah.
Build your team, as we've talked about, because it's not just the analytics of running a spreadsheet, but it's developing the business plan around that spreadsheet that you can communicate and sell to investors. And, you know, I take, I'm sure you do too, you take that very seriously when you're asking other people for their money. I had friends and family in the deal, and, you know, I wanted to be able to make sure I still had Thanksgiving dinner as an option to me, that they were going to speak to me. So,
oh yeah. At least before actually speaking of trying to speak to investors, create your sample deal packet, as people are saying, so that, because when you reach out to them, like what are you going to show them, right? Like what are they investing to? So they need to know that.
And even if you haven't done a deal as a GP, maybe you've been involved as an LP. I mean, show them some of those. Show them the things that you've learned. What part of, you know, what educational group are you a part of? And you can create an advisory type board that you can demonstrate to people that these creating the image of a big team when, and there is a big network of team people out there that they may not all be on your payroll though day one, but that's fine. There's a lot of people like that.
Yep. Yeah. Then for this loan, how much was the interest at that time?
Well, I said December of 17 we bought it. I'm looking here. It was 4.88%.
Okay.
and we had bought up a little bit because we bought a 12-year amortization. So I think it was 25 basis points up for that. So rather than the 10-year, I was wanting to protect it for a 12-year amortization. I'm sorry, 30-year amortization for the payment, but a 12-year balloon rather than a 10-year. So
12-year term.
And I would still go back to that today because it just gives you more time.
Yeah. Then yeah, I think for this deal, what was the investor split? Is it a 80-20?
So we're pretty one of the traditional ones, 80-20 split, no pref, straight 80-20. The simple capital stack, as I would call it, where there's pros and cons to the many different models that are out there today, and I divide those into two camps. Either the model is an investor-friendly model, or it is a sponsor-friendly model. And only after you've seen a lot of them can you begin to see the difference when people are taking liquidation fees and acquisition fees and many different. I would just say buyer beware and know what you're getting into as an LP, because there are just many different models out there today. With I said I've seen one 80-20, 70-30 splits. I've seen one as far as 50-50 split, which I don't know why anybody would do that.
Yeah.
But somebody does. And then, prefs, no prefs, there's advantages and disadvantages to both. Waterfall on the back end. Just know your sponsor, know who's putting the deal together, and ask questions.
Yep. Oh, and also I heard also from someone, like, make sure even if they said 80-20, make sure who has the 80 and who has the 20. Be
That's
sure.
a good one.
Because I heard like sometimes that 80-20, like the 80 is on the sponsor, but I don't know. Nowadays it will not happen, but just make sure.
Well, read back to that story of know your sponsor and read the documents. Nobody likes to read the legal documents, but I'm kind of a nerd. Whenever I invest in one, I read the PPM and the operating agreement and the pitch deck. So because it spells out those fees, it spells out the return of capital and how that goes, and et cetera. So.
Oh yeah. I think you don't need. I think for the PPM, definitely you need to take a look at those, whatever is in the one in their slide deck, right? The one when they're webinar. Make sure that's the same thing as in the PPM, because whatever is in the PPM, that's the one that will be used, not the slide deck. Although sometimes like they put as a exhibit the one in the slide deck as well, but make sure to double check. You don't need to like read it like word by word. At least just go directly like to the numbers and stuff. If it's the same thing.
And there's three things I look for when I look at them. I say, what's the equity split? What's the fees? What are the fees? What are the investor rights? Do the investors have any rights? Do they get to vote on anything? At least in my thinking, that's important and shows whether they're investor friendly or sponsor friendly models. And those are the three big things I look for. Assuming I don't even look at it unless I'm sold on the business model and the sponsor.
Oh yeah. If you already have the sponsor team and you have worked with them in the past, then yeah. Then what's the average cash on cash and IRR and AAR on this?
So I looked at 80-20 split. I said that I was looking back before we got on the phone today. We projected a 5-year 22% IRR. And so the good story is this. I've left out pieces of it, but we bought it in December of 17. In February of 18, there was a fire on the property and took out 20 units, 18 units of the 139. So no distributions for a while. Bottom line is we sold it in October of 19 and we returned 1.95x to the investors after 21 months. Wow. So
that's a good.
we nearly doubled their money. We were almost 2x, but after only 21 months. So I don't know about you guys, but I'll take that return all day, every day. So.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because nowadays, like you will see, that 2x your money probably in the 5 to 6 years. But that one is like if you can get it for less than 2 years, yeah, definitely. Yep,
Yeah.
that's good.
So it ended up working out, and I don't even know what that IRR calculates out to, the actual IRR,
Oh yeah.
other than very good.
Yep, double your money in less than 2 years.
I never put a pencil to it, so it's all right.
Yep, yeah, that's good. So this is a syndication deal. Then yeah, let's go to the next segment of the show where we will talk about the due diligence. What are the different due diligence that was done?
Yeah, that was so I was coached and to have a relationship with a property manager before you ever, put an LOI in. If you're going to a new market, whether you're going to Kansas City or Houston or Seattle or wherever, and wherever you live, I like what the real estate guys say, or they say, live where you want to live and invest where the numbers make sense. And I think that's very true, but you got to have somebody on site. So we're in Houston, and there are a lot of different property managers around here, but we found, and we interviewed the existing property manager of this company. So we use them to do the due diligence, to assist us in the due diligence and their relationships. We also, they did we had someone from the outside, a third party, since we were using the existing property management company, and had a third party do the lease audit. So another property management firm came in and did the lease audit, and we had plumbers looking plumbing, scoping the lines. An older property like that, you have potentially a lot of clogged lines and stuff. Thank goodness we didn't have one, but we had plumbers, roofers. We had people out walking the roofs, even though we had gotten the ages of the roofs and know what they were. We had a foundation guy out looking at the foundations of each of the buildings, because there were some pretty mature trees, and wanted to make sure that we didn't have any issues that were hidden. And happy to say it all worked out.
That's nice.
Happy to say that we didn't discover anything we didn't know. And what we did in that, I will say that I mentioned, so this asset in 21 months, I say I got my PhD in property management here. We had a fire. The property management company that we retained, we ended up firing like 9 months later. They just were not what we needed. And we were trying to find another one in Beaumont, Texas. And I ended up really becoming kind of the regional property manager. It was crazy. We were putting a whole lot of work into it. So
yeah,
it had a positive ending, but in the middle of that, so what can, I always say, what can go wrong on a property? So a fire, a boiler went out in the winter. I mentioned at the beginning of the show. So a boiler went out, trying to get that fixed. Roof leaks, property management change. We earned we earned the sponsorship fee, because it was a lot of work, but a lot of fun too.
Yeah. At least, yeah, I think I guess that's a positive side of, you learn all these mistakes, but at least you learned a lot, like, because of all this. If it was smooth sailing, probably you will not looking for how much will cost for chiller boiler, and then how to replace it. I think because in one of our discussions way back, like, you mentioned like, you need to rent the chiller boiler while the replacement. So it's not like a typical HVAC that it's readily available tomorrow or 2 days. The chiller boiler is not that available for how many weeks in that case, right? Yeah.
And so there's there's two chillers for 139 doors, and there were two boilers. So I think what the conversation we had offline, you're right, was when the chiller we were doubting whether the chiller was going to make it and we had to replace it. You had to bring in a temporary chiller, which comes in on a flatbed truck, and they sit down, and then they sit it down, and they have to repipe all the existing plumbing away from the current one and into the temporary one. And that's a minimum of $100,000 versus what you said. If you have HVAC units on each individual unit in a newer property, It's doubtful they're all going to go down at once,
Yep.
which is what you want. So you can replace them one at a time, and yeah, don't buy a chiller boiler property.
Yeah, the headache. Okay, then I think we already discussed about the capital raise, and so we go to the closing section. How much was the closing cost on this deal?
Closing costs, we had roughly 1.3 all in, if I remember correctly.
1.3%.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think it was, I'm sorry, the 1.3 was the down payment. Yeah, the closing costs were 3%. Closing costs were 3%.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I gotta get my numbers right.
Yeah. So then, yeah, for the LOI to close, how long did it take? I know, like the broker was kind of slow,
Yeah.
but
So
eventually, yeah, when
this
the
one is
broker is
not typical, and if it ever happened again today, I would walk away from it. But I'm going to say it literally took probably 6 months,
okay.
Which is totally unacceptable. But our doggedness in the end paid off because we were able to get the property. We bought it really right at a good time, and we made a lot of improvements, and we were able to sell it at a significant gains 21 months later. So.
Oh yeah.
So we're happy.
Yep. Then okay, we reached to the end of the segment. So I asked this to every guest in the show. So the
Okay.
final 5 sizzling questions. So first question, any lessons learned that you want to share?
Yes, lessons learned. I think I said, first of all, really, I was hungry for a deal. And so guys are especially, see what they want to see in things. And back to the, don't buy a chiller boiler property. Just don't do it. Move on, find another one. Unless you have a lot of knowledge in that and you know people in that space. I wouldn't buy a chiller boiler property. I would not be deterred by flat roofs, but that's also a red flag. How old are they? And just really do your due diligence. And then the other one, it would be just partners. Lessons learned is we were all there was 4 of us in total, and it was all of our first deals. A couple of them that was their second deal. But just, it worked out well. We all had strengths and weaknesses, but learning them on the fly could have been better done if we'd have had honest discussions up front about what our role differentiation was going to be. So with 4 general partners, you're not all going to want to do the same thing. So
yeah, I think that's a good point to the listeners. So there's different kind of roles and responsibility in a GP. So some may be on the acquisition side where they will always look for deals. Then another probably leg on the stool is the raising capital. Although everyone will need to probably raise capital, it's not only one person. Right. Then the third is the operations. So looking over the operation management or asset management.
And we had, I would say the fourth one is on that legs of the foot. So we had one of the partners was excellent in marketing. Oh. He was, positioning the pitch deck and talking to investors, and he was just excellent.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah. So the second question is any recommended books?
Any recommended books? Yeah, the 2 of them here. I think the one Harry Dent, What to Do When the Bubble Bursts, is a really good book because he is, I wouldn't call him a doomsdayer, but he predicted the 8 and 9 crash, and he's really, I just think he's articulate. Like the other one I like here is Mastering the Market Cycle by, you can't see it because of the glare, by Howard Marks.
Yes, yeah.
And that's also a very good book because the, as one of the guys I listen to a lot, Michael Becker, talks about trees don't always grow to the sky, right? And so nor do mountains grow to the sky. So it's not always an upward trend. There's going to be corrections. And if you talk to some of the people who have been in this industry longer, you just need to know how to weather yourself and position yourself for those. So long-term debt, cash flowing, et cetera, and be prepared for it.
Yep, for sure. Then and also I think that's the crucial point that you mentioned about the long term. So you don't want to get into let's say a loan that is kind of okay, 2-3 years short. I mean short term one.
Right.
Because let's say and like this COVID happened, right? So those who are in the middle of okay, I need to refinance 3 years or so what will happen is right now if you're in the refinance stage, you didn't take into consideration that when you refinance, you need now this 12-month reserves.
Yeah, and
so
the 12-month reserves, and you could get in a cycle. You could get caught having to refinance if you have short-term capital, and in the bad time in the cycle. There's a lot of people out there looking at deals today because they have some warts on them that are less than 90% occupant. So if it's under 90%, you're not going to get agency debt on it, and so they take out bridge debt, bridge loans, and all I can say is buyers beware, because there are bridge lenders out there who do what they say loan to own. So they'll loan you bridge money, but their covenants and the debt documents give them a lot of ability to take over the property. And some unscrupulous ones will actually loan you money with the intent of trying to take the property over. So be very cautious of what your capital stack is going to be, especially if you're using bridge debt.
Yep, for sure. Then the third question is any recommended podcast or YouTube channel that you're listening to and would recommend?
I mean, besides yours?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
I like the real estate guys. I'm an avid podcaster. Whenever I'm in the car, my wife and son are tired of it. But the real estate guys, Old Capital podcast is another one that I really enjoy. One that I liked a lot too, that actually just went off, had its last episode this week, is How to Lose Money by Paul Moore. And so, everybody talks about their successes, but Paul's How to Lose Money podcast talked about, failures, and failures are part of your success. And as somebody says, if you're in this business long enough, you're going to have some complexes that are a challenge.
Yeah.
Whether it's the fire I had, or God forbid somebody dies and there's a lawsuit or anything.
Oh yeah, I think probably I will listen to that How to Lose Money, because I think mostly you will learn probably the lesson, like what people did.
Yeah, and and it comes down to a lot of them, human behavior, optimism, not doing the due diligence, and there's consistent themes in there that I think I just enjoy, because we all tend to see, when you're looking at deals, the upside, but we need to quantify and plan for the downside.
Yeah. So okay, then for the fourth question, this is the time to promote yourself. What's your acquisition criteria for multifamily in terms of location, units?
Yeah, thanks. So I have an LLC, InvestArk Properties LLC, and there's a webpage out there that's got my whole portfolio on it. But I'm focused on trying to find. I'm in Houston, so I'm looking at Houston, Phoenix primary markets. I like the tertiary markets. I should say the tertiary markets outside of the big cities in Texas, just because there's some better value there these days. Generally looking at 10 to $20 million purchase price, $100 million. 100 doors plus. Something that I think the 1.95x was a home run. I don't think that most investors should be prepared for that in 21 months. So I tell investors I talk to, I'm shooting for high single digits cash on cash a year, and a total return over 5 years of 75 plus. higher the better, 75% plus over 5 years, and that's still a very healthy return. That's still and that's, I don't know about you, but it's better than I'm getting in the stock market. So.
Oh yeah, that's so that one will be around 15. Yep.
Yeah, that calculates out to about a 14 plus IRR at a minimum. So you look for something that's got that around a 14% IRR at a minimum. And these days, I'm thinking, to most investors I'm talking to, it's probably going to be a longer hold to really get the kind of profits you want, because first of all, you have large prepayment penalties in most of the agency debt. And I don't think we're going to see the rapid appreciation or the cap rate continue to see cap rate consolidation. We may see a little bit of it, but I mean, in the last 6 years, it's gone from 7 to 8% down to 4. 300 or 400 basis points, which is crazy.
Oh yeah.
So it's going to go down a little bit more, I think, in the next couple of years, but I don't anticipate anything like that.
Yes. Yeah, I think that this cap rate compression is really like bringing all the prices very high.
So I'd love to talk to any of your listeners if they are interested in those markets, or even if they just want to talk on an educational vein. I find joy in giving back to people and just to answer questions and be a resource to people. I mean, you and I had a nice friendship that way starting out about a year ago too, and so would happy to talk to anybody that needs somebody else.
Yeah. To the last question, like, what's the best way to contact you?
So the best way is my webpage is invest-ark, A-R-K, invest-ark.com. And there's a place there for if you want to schedule a call with me. I'm happy to do that. Just send me a note or text me at randy.langenderfer. That's randy.langenderfer, Langenderfer, at invest-ark.com. Same domain name, and I'd love to talk to you.
Okay, yeah, I'll put Randy's contact information in the show notes, and also the book and the podcast, like link to the podcast, so that people will know. You don't need to Google it. So thanks Randy for your time. Appreciate it.
Jeff, I really want to thank you. It's been my pleasure, and I hope, as we said, we gave the listeners a little bit of value, and happy to talk to anybody if they want to. Oh yeah, and also one more thing before we end. I think just to let everyone know, Randy was also my one-on-one coach when I was in when I'm in Radcliffe's Warriors group. So I'm still in Radcliffe, but so he's really, really good. Like a lot of information that he's sharing to me and stuff. So thank you for that, Randy. Thank you. Down, down, down.